sunny Beverly Hills light slanted through the clear glass of the Forrester mansion, where everything seemed still sparkling, perfect, but rotting from within. Gone were the mornings when Eric Forrester sat over his sketchbook with a half-hidden smile. No longer did he clink his glass as he raised his glass to toast to a new idea. His office was still intact. The smell of vintage perfume, the ticking clock, the jacket draped over the chair, but the man who had been the soul of the empire was now a fading memory to those who remained. The news of the passing of John McCook, who had lived with the character of Eric for decades, rang like a bell signaling the end of an era, not just on screen, but in the very soul of the bold and the beautiful. But in Forrester's world, death was never just a loss, it was always the beginning of a new battle. When Eric first fell ill, everything seemed to be falling apart. Ridge took over temporarily. Brooke stood by as a familiar shadow. Steffi kept the company afloat, and Hope tried to maintain harmony between people who couldn't get along. But this time was different. The illness wasn't just a warning. It was the end. When word of Eric's death spread, Los Angeles fell silent for a few minutes, and then the wheels of power began to turn. Forrester Creations, a symbol of beauty, heritage, and elegance, was now a battlefield where Forresters had to choose between family and power, loyalty and ambition. Ridge sat in the large office where he had argued with his father so many times about style, values, and the future. Now there was only the steady hum of a fan and sunlight on his gaunt face. Brooke walked in, saying nothing, but Ridge saw in her eyes what he had always feared. She wanted to make sure Eric's legacy wouldn't fall into someone else's hands. For Brooke, love and legacy were intertwined. She loved Ridge, but she also loved the Forrester name he represented. Ridge, deep down, didn't know if he was fighting for the company or just to prove to his father that he was never wrong to believe in him. Steffi, on the other side of town, sat in the empty conference room, her eyes closed, but her mind racing. She'd grown up in the Forrester spotlight, learning how to fight, how to win, and how to hide her emotions. But with Eric's death, her greatest fear emerged, that this family, this name, everything they'd built, would fall apart in the hands of people not strong enough to carry it. She didn't trust Ridge to lead the company into the new era. She didn't trust Brooke to separate her heart from her calculations. And she also didn't believe that Hope, the daughter of her old rival, could sit at the same table with her without hiding a knife behind her back. Meanwhile, Hope stands by the window, holding a photo of Eric smiling brightly beside her at an old collection launch. To Hope, Eric was a mentor, a believer in her light, a man who saw her vulnerability not as weakness, but as strength. His death left her in a void, a place where there is no right or wrong, only responsibility. But when she sees the changes in Ridge and Steffi, their eyes full of suspicion and calculation, she knows that all the good that Eric represents is being stifled. Then comes the first shareholder meeting after the funeral. The room falls silent as Ridge puts a file on the table, his voice hoarse, talking about needing someone to carry on Eric's spirit. But who is that person? Brooke looks at him. Steffi looks at Brooke, Hope looks down, and Zend, Carter, and Thomas stand outside, each with their own agenda. In that moment, all the lights of Forrester Creations, the white walls, the bright promotional photos, seemed unable to hide the darkness of the human heart. When the meeting broke up, rumors began to leak out. Some said Eric had left a secret will, others that he had planned to transfer control to someone outside the family to avoid civil war. The rumors spread like wildfire, burning through every fragile relationship. Brooke turned to Ridge, suspecting he was holding something back. Steffi thought Brooke was trying to seize the legacy through influence and emotion. Hope stood in the middle, trying to mediate, but she herself became the target of suspicion. A Logan bloodline could not represent Forrester. As time went on, the atmosphere at the company became more and more toxic. Every smile was thorny, every word measured with calculation. Outside, the media began to ask, who is the next in line to inherit the Forrester empire? And each article felt like a knife stabbing deeper into the family. But in the silence, a cruel truth was waiting to be revealed. Eric, before he died, left not one will, but two. One formal one, dividing ownership among the members, and a handwritten one, found in a drawer where he used to work late at night. In it, he made no mention of shares, money, or control. He simply wrote, "The rightful successor to Forrester is one who knows that fashion is not just about beauty, but about faith in people." Those words set things on fire. Who among them still had faith in humanity? Brooke, who had betrayed and been forgiven countless times. Ridge, who only knew how to act on his ego. Steffi, who put survival above all else. Or Hope, who carried within her a weakness that the Forrester world despised. The war began not with words, but with looks, with small decisions that gradually became large cracks. Ridge forced a change in brand strategy. Steffi quietly gathered loyal shareholders. Brooke went her own way, talking about the Eric spirit in interviews, winning the public over to her side. And Hope, amidst all this, chose silence. But it was her silence that made her the center of the storm. People began to say that Eric wanted her to lead the Hope for the Future brand as the next generation. The climax came when a real storm hit, not a metaphor, but a real event. Lightning struck the Forrester main factory on a rainy night, damaging the electrical system and burning the upcoming collection. The flames spread like a symbol of the collapse that was devouring the once invincible empire. As firefighters pulled out the burned fabric, Hope sat on the porch, her eyes blank, and Ridge knelt in the ashes, his hand clutching a remnant of fabric, the last piece Eric had ever touched. The next day, they met again, and no one spoke of money or power. Steffi, her voice trembling, said that perhaps they had forgotten what Eric had taught them, that Forrester existed not for fame, but for the desire to create beauty in chaos. In that moment, everyone fell silent, their eyes meeting, no longer hateful, only exhausted. Brooke shed tears. Ridge put his hand on her shoulder, and Hope quietly stood up, took the burned fabric, and said she would finish the collection. A month later, the first show of the post-Forrester era took place. The catwalk was white, no backdrop, no fireworks, just soft lighting and simple designs that contained what Eric believed. Beauty comes from people, not power. When the last model walked out, the old music played, the music Eric always played at the end of a show. The audience stood up, tears glistening on the faces of those who had fought. But when the lights went down, the question remained, like a ghost that refused to fade. Had the Forresters truly been saved, or had they just survived temporarily in a new cycle of fame and legacy? And if Eric could see it all from somewhere high above, would he smile? Or would he ask the Forresters themselves the most haunting question of all? You have learned how to create beauty, but do you still know how to love each other? The Los Angeles afternoon was a murky twilight, as if the sky itself knew something was quietly brewing. Inside the Forrester mansion, laughter and the clinking of glasses echoed, but even the familiar atmosphere of lavish parties could not conceal the simmering tension in everyone's hearts. Eric Forrester, a man who had lived through a lifetime of glory and loss, stood next to Taylor Hayes, his gaze no longer that of a founder, but that of a man carrying something unspoken. Taylor, who had once saved his soul from empty nights, was now at the center of an unexpected danger. Sheila Carter was back. The shadow never completely disappeared. It only waited for the moment to strike, and now was the moment. As the sun set, gunshots rang out in the quiet night like blades tearing through the false curtain of security. It all happened in a few seconds, but to Eric, time seemed to stop. He saw Taylor standing there, stunned, eyes wide, then a flash of light, the bullet hurtling toward her at a speed no one could understand. Without time to think, without time to calculate, Eric stepped forward, an instinctive step, a step that carried with it a lifetime of love, loss, forgiveness, and sacrifice. A second gunshot rang out. His body collapsed in Taylor's arms, blood flowing out, warm and heavy like his memories of the things he had not yet said. Sheila ran away, her shadow fading into the night, but the echo of the gunshot lingered in the hearts of those left behind. Taylor hugged Eric, her trembling hand pressed to the wound in his chest, where the bullet had penetrated, where his heart had once beaten for art, for family, and for the people he loved. The ambulance siren blared, red and blue lights spinning in the night, reflecting on Taylor's pale face. She called his name without a sound, only a ragged breath and tears mixed with blood. The whole town was stunned. The news spread like wildfire, and within hours, Los Angeles was different. No one believed that Eric Forrester, the symbol of immortality, the man who had stood at the pinnacle of fame for decades, could fall from a senseless bullet. Donna, his wife who had stood by him in his final years, stared at the bloody shoes left in the hospital. She didn't cry right away. Donna's pain came not as tears but as confusion. Why had Eric saved Taylor? Was there something deeper between them that she had never known? In the days that followed, suspicion seeped like a slow rain into every corner of the Forrester household. Ridge stood before his father's portrait, his hands clenched, trying to understand why the man who had taught him honor and duty would choose to die to protect Taylor, the woman who had torn everything apart in their family. Brooke tried to comfort them, but there was a puzzled look in her eyes. Everyone tried to act strong, but in each of their hearts, a silent question rang out. Did Eric do it out of compassion, or out of a love he never dared to admit? Taylor, after recovering, almost disappeared. She refused to interact with anyone, did not appear at any memorial service. She lived in a small house outside the city, every day playing back old tapes of Eric working, his voice ringing like the wind, low, calm, full of authority, but also full of kindness. She felt guilty, as if she were carrying a debt that could never be repaid. Eric had saved her, but at the same time, he had also robbed her of the chance to say goodbye. Donna, meanwhile, could not sleep. She searched through every letter, every sketch that Eric had left. Among the hundreds of papers, she found an unfinished drawing, an image of a woman standing between light and darkness. In the bottom corner, Eric had written a small line. Not all light comes from the sun. Sometimes it comes from a soul that has been burned by darkness. Donna knew who Eric was talking about. Taylor. The words were like a knife that cut deep into her heart, making her realize that she had never truly understood the man she loved. In the following days, Forrester Creations was immersed in an atmosphere of mourning. The employees wore black. No one dared to speak loudly. No one dared to touch the chair where Eric had sat. But behind the silence, the arguments began. Ridge and Steffi wanted to hold a memorial performance in Eric's honor, while Donna objected. She believed that Eric would not want his death used as a promotional tool. Hope sided with Donna, but that only made the family conflict more tense. One night, when all seemed quiet, Donna received a small package from an unknown address. Inside was a bloody handkerchief and a note written in shaky handwriting. Eric was not there by accident. He knew Sheila would do it. He chose to stay to finish what he had started. The words left Donna speechless. If Eric knew, he planned his death. And if that's true, then it's not just a tragedy, it's redemption. Taylor, hearing the news from Donna, collapsed. In that moment, she understood every last piece of the puzzle. Eric had said that guilt is not washed away by silence, but by action. He knew Sheila would come for her. He knew she was still a target because of what happened in the past. And he chose to stand in the middle of the bullet, not just to save her, but to end the cycle that his family and Sheila had perpetuated for decades. On the day of the official funeral, hundreds of people showed up, from former models, rivals, designers, even those who had considered Eric an enemy. No one said much, because no words could contain what he left behind. Brooke stood in the crowd, looking at Donna, her face gaunt, her eyes red and swollen, but still holding the demeanor of the woman who had been Eric's last. Ridge, standing next to Taylor, was no longer angry. In that moment, all the animosity between them melted away. As the coffin was lowered, the sunlight filtered through the trees and cast an unusually bright reflection on the wooden lid. Donna bowed her head slightly, her hands clutching the black cloth, while Taylor placed a white rose on the coffin lid, the flower Eric had chosen for his first collection. Everyone was silent, but something had changed in each of their hearts. That night, Los Angeles rained again. Taylor sat alone in the room where Eric had once drawn, the desk lamp illuminating the unfinished sketch. She touched the last line, the unfinished outline of a woman in the light. She knew it was her, knew that Eric had seen what she dared not see, the remnants of her humanity in the darkness. Outside, the city was drenched in the patter of rain, the lights reflecting off the glass. A gust of wind blew, shaking Eric's picture on the wall, as if he were still there, watching, smiling. And in that moment, Taylor realized a cold truth. Sometimes, death isn't the end, but the only way to remind the living of what they've forgotten. But as lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating her face, a quiet question echoed in her mind. If Eric had sacrificed everything to end the cycle of revenge, had the darkness truly lifted, or had it only begun to rise in the form of the people?